Imagine believing you had found the love of your life, the man who seemed to embody everything you'd ever dreamed of. Handsome, attentive, caring. The kind of man who makes strangers smile just by holding your hand in public. Now, imagine discovering months later that the very same man was hiding a truth so dark, it still sends chills down my spine when I talk about it. Hi everyone, my name is Rachel. This is my story. And before I dive in, if you love true life stories filled with suspense, twists, and lessons that could save someone's life, make sure you subscribe. Because trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. When I first met Adrian, he was the definition of a dream fiancé. Tall, sharp jawline, the kind of warm smile that makes you feel like you're the only person in the world. He had this way of making people lean in when he spoke, not because he was loud or overbearing, but because he carried himself with such calm confidence. Even my parents, who had never approved of anyone I'd dated before, adored him instantly. My mom whispered to me after their first dinner, "You've finally found a good one. Don't let him go." And my dad? He clapped Adrian on the back like they'd been friends for years. I won't lie, after years of heartbreak, betrayal, and men who treated me like I was disposable, it felt almost surreal to be with someone like him. I wanted stability. I wanted to feel safe. And Adrian gave me that, or so I thought. There was something almost too perfect about him. But at the time, I didn't question it. He was attentive to a fault. Always remembering the smallest details, my favorite tea, the way I like my books stacked on the shelf, the exact date my grandmother passed away. He'd bring me flowers without reason, make dinner after my long shifts, and constantly reassure me how lucky he was to have me. But what made me fall for him most was how he spoke about his past, about his late wife. The first time he told me about her, his voice dropped to this soft, broken whisper. He painted her as this incredible woman, kind, graceful, gone too soon. And the way he described the pain of losing her, I swear, my heart ached for him. I admired his strength, how he had carried such grief, and still managed to love again. Looking back, I realize now that grief was his greatest mask. That night, we were sitting in my apartment, having what seemed like the perfect evening. The glow from the candles flickered off the wine glasses, casting warm shadows across the walls. Adrian was in one of his crisp white shirts, sleeves rolled up, his tie loose like he'd just come from work, but couldn't wait to relax with me. We talked wedding plans, the guest list, the honeymoon, even silly arguments over what kind of cake to have. I remember laughing so hard at one of his jokes that I nearly spilled my wine. It was blissful. At one point, he reached across the table, took my hand, and said, "I can't wait for forever with you." And my heart soared. I thought, this is it. This is my happy ending. But little did I know, while I sat there glowing with happiness, the man across from me wasn't planning a forever with me. At least, not the kind of forever I thought. See, what I didn't realize was that fate had already begun to unravel the perfect picture I had painted in my mind. And it started with something as small, as simple as a phone. Dinner ended, and I excused myself to the restroom. I tossed my phone onto the coffee table as I walked away, not giving it a second thought. What I didn't know then was that I had accidentally left the recording app open. It wasn't intentional. In fact, I only discovered it much later. But while I was gone, while I was out of the room, my phone captured something I never would have believed had I not heard it with my own ears. At the time, I didn't know. I came back, we finished dessert, and Adrian kissed my forehead goodnight like he always did. I went to bed thinking it was just another beautiful night with the love of my life. When Adrian kissed me goodnight and closed the door behind him, everything still felt perfect. I remember leaning against the door for a second, smiling like some giddy teenager. He had this way of making me feel cherished, desired, safe. The apartment was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. The candle wax from dinner had melted into messy little puddles, and the smell of roasted garlic still lingered in the air. I padded into the kitchen, rinsed the wine glasses, then slipped into my bedroom, still replaying Adrian's words in my mind. "I can't wait for forever with you. Forever." The word echoed in my head like a lullaby as I curled up in bed, pulling the blanket around my shoulders. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, intending to scroll mindlessly before drifting off. That's when I noticed it. The little red dot in the corner. The recording app was still open. At first, I frowned, confused. I must have tapped it accidentally when I tossed my phone onto the coffee table earlier. I almost deleted it right then, but curiosity made me pause. How long had it been recording? Almost 40 minutes. Long enough to capture most of our dinner. Part of me thought it could be fun. Maybe I'd hear our laughter, maybe even save it as some silly little memory. But another part of me hesitated. Still, I pressed play. At first, it was just silence. The faint clink of silverware, our laughter in the distance, the scrape of a chair when I stood up to use the restroom. Then, I heard him. Adrian's voice. Low, calm, almost playful. But he wasn't talking to me. She believes everything, he said. Just like the others did. My stomach clenched so violently, I thought I might be sick. The others? I sat bolt upright in bed, the phone trembling in my hand. Maybe he was joking. Maybe I was misunderstanding. But then he laughed. Not the charming laugh I knew so well, but something sharper, crueler. She has no idea. Gullible, just like the rest. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, heart pounding so loudly it drowned out everything else. And then he said it. Even my late wife. She never saw it coming. The tone wasn't grief. It wasn't sadness. It was triumph. My skin went cold. My mind raced. His late wife, Emily. That's the name he told me months ago. The woman he'd painted as the love of his life. Lost to tragedy. Why would he talk about her like that? Why would he laugh? I wanted to stop the recording. To throw my phone across the room. But I couldn't. I couldn't move. Because Adrian wasn't done. And Rachel? His voice dropped into a whisper. She'll join them soon enough. I froze. Every nerve in my body screamed, but I couldn't even breathe. Join them? Who was them? The silence that followed was deafening. I replayed the last line again, just to make sure I hadn't imagined it. But no, the words were there.
Clear. Calm.
Final. My chest tightened. My fiancé, the man my parents adored, the man who held my hand and promised me forever, had just whispered about my death like it was already written. My first thought was denial. Maybe it wasn't what it sounded like. Maybe he was rehearsing lines for some role or joking with a friend. But denial crumbled as quickly as it came. I sat there in bed, staring at the dark ceiling, my entire body trembling. My mind kept replaying his words, looping them until they carved into me like blades. Just like the others did. Even my late wife. She never saw it coming. She'll join them soon enough. By the time the recording ended, I wasn't the same person anymore. The phone slipped from my hands onto the sheets. My body felt heavy, paralyzed by the enormity of what I had just heard. Adrian was no grieving widower. He was something else. Something darker. And I was trapped in the middle of his game. I didn't sleep that night. My mind twisted between fear and disbelief. Every shadow in my room looked sinister. Every creak in the apartment made me flinch. I kept asking myself the same question over and over. Had I just discovered I was engaged to a killer? By morning, my world felt unrecognizable. I forced myself to smile when my mom called to check in, her cheerful voice filling the silence. I wanted to tell her everything, to scream that Adrian wasn't who he thought he was. But the words stuck in my throat. Because what if I was wrong? What if I wasn't? And if Adrian found out I knew, what would he do to me? As I hung up the phone, one thought cut through the chaos like a knife. I needed answers. Proof. Something to tell me if the man I loved was really who he claimed to be. So, with trembling hands, I opened my laptop.
Typed his name.
Adrian Clark. And began digging. At first, it was the usual, his LinkedIn profile, photos of him at work events, smiling, surrounded by colleagues who praised him as a natural leader and a man of integrity. But when I searched deeper, things didn't add up. His late wife, Emily. There was almost nothing about her.
No obituary. No funeral notices.
Just a single wedding announcement buried in the archives of a small-town newspaper. A picture of Adrian with a beautiful brunette beside him, smiling the same way I'd once thought was meant only for me. But after that, silence. Like Emily had vanished into thin air. I searched for hours. Tried every keyword. Emily Clark. Emily Foster. Emily Obituary.
Émilie Accident.
Nothing. It was like she'd never existed. And the more I searched, the heavier the dread settled over me. Because who forgets to leave a trail of a life? Unless someone erased it. I try to tell myself I was imagining things. That grief makes people private. That not every life is perfectly cataloged online. But then my phone buzzed. It was Adrian. Good morning, beautiful. I couldn't stop thinking about last night. Dinner was perfect. I'm the luckiest man alive. I stared at the screen, my heart hammering. How could he sound so normal? How could he play the role of a devoted fiancé so effortlessly when I knew what I knew? I didn't respond right away. My fingers hovered over the keys, trembling. Finally, I typed, "Good morning." Yes, it was nice. It felt pathetic.
Weak.
But I couldn't risk raising suspicion. Because if he realized I had doubts, I didn't know what he'd do. Later that afternoon, I drove to my parents' house. My mom greeted me with her usual warmth, pulling me into a hug, her perfume wrapping around me like comfort. My dad was in the living room, sipping coffee and reading the paper. I sat there at the kitchen table, trying to smile, trying to act normal. But my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Finally, my mom tilted her head. "Rachel, sweetheart, what's wrong?" The words burst out before I could stop them. "Mom, Dad, what do you really think of Adrian?" They exchanged a glance, surprised. My dad lowered his paper. "What kind of question is that? We like him. He treats you well, doesn't he?" "He does," I said quickly. Too quickly. "He's perfect." But the word tasted bitter. I wanted to tell them everything. About the recording. About Emily. About the way my stomach dropped every time I thought of Adrian's smile. But fear clamped around my throat. Instead, I whispered, "Sometimes, I just wonder if he's too perfect." My mom chuckled, brushing it off. "Honey, after the men you've dated, maybe you're just not used to someone good." My dad leaned back, squinting. "Rachel, is he hurting you?" The question sliced into me. My eyes burned.
No.
No, he's not. At least not yet. I left shortly after. Their worried faces burned into my memory. I knew they'd sense something. But I couldn't drag them into the darkness I was starting to see. Not until I knew for sure. That night, Adrian showed up at my apartment unannounced, holding a bouquet of lilies, my favorite. "Surprise," he grinned, kissing me lightly on the cheek. "I missed you." I forced a smile, praying he couldn't hear the pounding in my chest. He looked around the apartment, his gaze sharp, assessing. "You've been quiet today. Everything okay?" "Just tired," I lied. He tilted his head, eyes narrowing. Then, as quickly as suspicion had flickered, he smiled again. "I booked us a weekend trip. Just the two of us. Somewhere quiet, romantic. You'll love it." My heart sank. A trip? Alone with him? But I nodded, because what else could I do? His hand brushed my cheek, gentle. "Rachel, you trust me, don't you?" The words wrapped around me like a noose. "Of course," I whispered. And that was when I saw it. The flicker in his eyes. The satisfaction. Like he had me exactly where he wanted me. Later, after he left, I stood in the hallway of my apartment, every muscle tense. Because I heard it again. A voice. His voice. Muffled, coming from outside the door. Low enough that I couldn't make out the words. I crept closer, hard in my throat. But when I opened the door, the hallway was empty. No Adrian. No one. Just silence. By then, paranoia was eating me alive. I had to know the truth. So, a few days later, when Adrian left his coat draped over a chair at my place, I did something I never thought I'd do. I searched. My hands shook as I opened the closet, rifled through his things, praying for nothing, fearing everything. And then I found it. A box. Tucked behind a stack of sweaters, like it wasn't meant to be seen. I pulled it out, my breath ragged. Inside was a necklace. Delicate. Beautiful.
Old.
And engraved with initials that weren't mine.
Yef.
Emily Foster. Adrian's late wife. But why was it here? Why hadn't he buried it with her? Why hide it instead of keeping it somewhere visible, where grief might seem natural? Unless it wasn't grief at all. Unless it was a trophy. My blood ran cold as I clutched the necklace in my trembling hand. Because if he kept this, what else had he kept? And if I didn't stop pretending soon, would I be next? I thought.
I didn't sleep that night.
The necklace sat on my nightstand, glinting in the pale glow of the streetlight slipping through the blinds. Emily Foster. Adrian's wife. Or his victim. I couldn't stop staring at it. Couldn't stop thinking about the way he'd spoken in that recording. The way his eyes sometimes lingered just a little too long, his smiles just a little too sharp. By dawn, I knew I couldn't do this alone. So I made a decision. I was going to find out who Emily really was. And what had happened to her. I went to the courthouse the next day. The place smelled of dust and old paper. Rows of filing cabinets, stacks of records that seemed untouched for years. Asked about marriage certificates, death records. The clerk raised a brow, but handed me the forms. And there it was. Emily Foster Clark. Married to Adrian Clark. Death listed as accidental fall, 2019. An accident. I froze. Because something about it felt wrong. Too neat. Too vague. A whole life reduced to a single line. Accidental fall. But when I asked for the coroner's report, the clerk shook her head.
Sealed.
Family request. Family request? Adrian? My hands trembled as I stuffed the papers into my bag. I needed someone who could dig deeper. Someone who wasn't blinded by Adrian's smile the way my parents were. Someone who could see what I was too afraid to face. That's when I thought of Detective Sarah Mitchell. I'd met her once at a community event through a friend. Sharp eyes, no nonsense, the kind of woman who could read a person like a book. She had mentioned working cold cases. I remembered her card. And I still had it. When I called, my voice cracked. Detective Mitchell? You probably don't remember me, but I need help. It's about my fiancé. There was a pause on the line. Then, come in tomorrow morning. Don't bring him. Her office was stark, the walls lined with photos of unsolved cases. She studied me as I clutched my bag, the necklace hidden inside like contraband. Tell me everything, she said. So I did. The recording. The necklace. Emily's sealed report. When I finished, Sarah leaned back, arms crossed. Her eyes narrowed. You realize what you're suggesting, right? That your fiancé isn't just lying. He could be dangerous. My throat tightened. I know how it sounds. But I'm not crazy. She studied me for a long time before nodding. You're not crazy. But if you're right, we're dealing with someone who's covered his tracks before. My stomach churned. Rachel, she continued, her voice low, steady, you can't confront him. You can't let him know you're suspicious. If this man is who I think he might be, you're already in danger. Her words sent a shiver down my spine. So what do I do? I whispered. You act normal. You give him nothing to suspect. Meanwhile, I'll open a quiet inquiry. Pull police reports.
Talk to contacts.
I left the precinct shaken but determined. But the moment I stepped out into the parking lot, a chill swept down my spine. Adrian's car. Parked at the far end. My breath caught. Was he watching me? I blinked, rubbed my eyes, and it was gone. Just a black sedan that looked like his. But the paranoia had sunk its claws deep in me. That night, Adrian called. His voice was light, playful. Hey, gorgeous. Haven't heard from you today. Everything okay? I gripped the phone tighter. My voice cracked. Yeah, just busy. There was a pause. Then he laughed softly. You sound tense. You know you can tell me anything, right? My heart thundered. Did he know? Could he hear the fear in my voice? Of course, I whispered. Good, he said, his tone dipping lower. Because relationships are built on trust, Rachel. And if there's one thing I can't stand, it's betrayal. The words slammed into me like a punch. I forced out a laugh, weak and brittle. Of course. I'd never. Good, he said again, calm as silk. Because I love you. And he hung up. I couldn't keep it inside anymore. That weekend, I drove to my parents' house again, tears spilling as soon as I saw them. I think Adrian's dangerous, I blurted out. My dad frowned. Rachel. No, listen to me. His wife, Emily, she didn't just die. I think he killed her. I found her necklace in his closet. He said things on a recording, Dad. Things that... Sweetheart, my mom interrupted, gripping my hand. You've been under so much stress. Are you sure you're not? I'm not making this up. I shouted, my voice breaking. Silence. My dad sighed, rubbing his temples. Rachel, I want to believe you. But Adrian's been nothing but good to you. Maybe you're misinterpreting. The frustration boiled inside me. They didn't understand. They couldn't see through his mask. And if they couldn't, how could anyone else? That night, alone in my apartment, I sat on the couch clutching the necklace. My chest heaved with sobs I couldn't control. Was I really alone in this? Or worse, was I already too late? Because as I wiped my tears, I noticed something on my coffee table. A single lily. Fresh. Perfectly placed. And I hadn't put it there. My phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. Sweet dreams, love. I'll see you soon. The lily sat on my table like a silent threat. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't even scream. Because deep down, I knew what it meant. Adrian had been here, inside my home, and I hadn't even noticed. The message on my phone still glowed against the darkness of my living room. Sweet dreams, love. I'll see you soon. But in that moment, there was nothing sweet about it. It felt like a promise. And a warning. With trembling hands, I dialed Detective Mitchell. She picked up on the second ring, her voice calm but alert. Rachel. He's been here, I whispered. Adrian, he left a flower. A lily. On my table. Silence. Then her voice sharpened. Rachel, listen to me. Do not confront him. Do not let him know you're suspicious. I'll run deeper checks. I'll dig into Emily's file, into his background. You just stay safe.
Can you do that?
I swallowed hard, nodding even though she couldn't see me. I'll try. Good. I'll call you tomorrow with updates. And Rachel? Yes. Don't sleep alone tonight if you can help it. Her words made my stomach twist. Because she was right. I had to go to my parents' home to spend the night. The next day, Adrian showed up at my work with his usual smile, carrying a bouquet of roses. He kissed my cheek in front of my coworkers, his arm protective around my waist. You're working too hard, he teased, his voice soft and sweet. I can't wait until you're my wife. Then I'll make sure you're spoiled every single day. My coworkers practically swooned. One of them whispered, You're so lucky, Rachel. He's perfect. I forced a smile, but inside, my skin crawled. Because I knew what no one else did.
Perfect was just the mask.
And I was the only one who'd seen the cracks. That evening, my phone buzzed. It was Detective Mitchell. I pulled the police records, she said without preamble. And you were right. Emily Foster's case was closed as an accident, but there were irregularities. Witnesses reported hearing arguments. Neighbors saw her bruised. But Adrian charmed the investigators, convinced them she was clumsy, prone to falls. He even insisted she'd been drinking that night. My blood turned cold. Rachel, Sarah continued, there's more. Emily wasn't the first. Adrian was engaged once before her, years earlier. A woman named Chloe. She died in a car accident, brakes failed. Police called it mechanical failure, but her family swore the car had just been serviced. Again, Adrian walked away clean. My hand clamped over my mouth.
Chloe.
Emily. And now me. I wanted to scream, to run, to disappear. But when I thought about leaving, I remembered Adrian's words. The only thing I can't forgive is betrayal. What if he found out? What if he already suspected I knew? Because sometimes I caught him looking at me differently. his eyes lingering too long, his smile not quite reaching his eyes.
Like he was studying me.
Measuring me. A few nights after, as we were having dinner at my apartment, Adrian leaned back in his chair, sipping wine. "You've been distracted lately," he said casually, though his eyes were sharp. "Something on your mind?" My fork froze halfway to my mouth. "Just work stress." He tilted his head, smiling faintly. "You'd tell me if something was wrong, wouldn't you?" "Of course." I forced a smile. "Good," he murmured, reaching across to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers lingered on my neck. "Because trust, that's the foundation of marriage. And if we don't have that..." He let the words hang unfinished. But the message was clear. The next day, I went to my mom again. "Mom," I begged, gripping her hands. "Please listen to me. Adrian isn't who he seems. Detective Mitchell is looking into him. He's dangerous. I need you to believe me." Her eyes softened with pity. "Honey, I want to believe you. But Adrian, he's been nothing but kind. He's already called us about the wedding venue, the catering." "He what?" I cut in, my stomach dropping. She nodded. "He said you were overwhelmed, so he's handling things. Honestly, Rachel, he just seems like he's trying to take care of you." I felt sick. Adrian wasn't just controlling me anymore. He was weaving himself into my family. That weekend, Adrian invited my parents out to dinner. He charmed them effortlessly, cracking jokes, raising toasts, even reminiscing about the first time he'd met them. My parents laughed, relaxed, glowing with approval. And then, as he refilled my mom's glass, his hand brushed mine under the table. His thumb pressed hard against my skin. Too hard. His smile never wavered as he leaned closer and whispered so low only I could hear. "You look beautiful tonight. Don't ruin it." My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear the rest of the conversation. That night, as soon as I was alone, my phone buzzed again. "Rachel, it's Sarah. I need you to listen carefully," she said, her voice tense. I pulled Adrian's financials. He took out a large life insurance policy on Emily just months before she died. "And Rachel," her voice broke slightly, "he's done the same with you." The room spun around me. Insurance. It wasn't just about control. It was about profit. I wasn't just his fiancé. I was his next payout. I dropped the phone in shock, my hands shaking violently. And that's when I heard it. The sound of keys turning in my front door. Adrian.
Coming in.
And I hadn't even given him a key. My breath caught as the door creaked open, and his voice floated in, calm, casual, chilling. "Rachel? Are you home?" I froze in the dark, my back pressed against the wall, my pulse thundering in my ears. He was inside. He was here. And I had no idea if I'd make it out alive. The sound of Adrian's voice calling my name sent ice flooding through my veins. He sounded so casual, so calm, like a husband coming back from work. But I knew better. I hadn't given him a key. And yet, he was standing in my doorway, letting himself in like he owned the place. I pressed my back against the wall, trying to steady my breath. My phone lay on the floor where I dropped it after Detective Mitchell's call. The screen still lit up with her last words echoing in my mind. "He took out a life insurance policy on you." My blood ran cold. His footsteps were slow, deliberate, echoing off the hardwood floor. "I brought you something," he said softly, almost singing the words. "Something special." A bag rustled. The smell of lilies, strong, suffocating, filled the air. I fought the urge to gag. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to bolt for the door. But he was between me and the exit. I slipped silently toward my bedroom, praying the floorboards wouldn't creak. "Funny," Adrian's voice floated through the dark. "Your car's outside. Lights are off, but no Rachel." He chuckled under his breath, low and chilling. "Are we playing hide and seek, love?" I pressed myself into the corner of my room, heart hammering so hard it hurt. My hands shook as I grabbed the lamp from my nightstand, the only thing heavy enough to be a weapon. Then, silence. I couldn't hear him anymore.
No footsteps.
No voice. Nothing. Until the faint creak of my bedroom door opening. He stood there, framed by the hall light, smiling like this was some kind of game. "There you are," he whispered. "Adrian," I stammered, gripping the lamp. "What are you doing here?" His smile widened, his eyes gleaming. What I should have done a long time ago. The mask of the perfect fiancé was gone. His voice was sharper now, colder, dripping with menace. "You were supposed to be easy. Sweet, trusting Rachel. Just like Emily. Just like Chloe. But no, you had to go snooping. You had to ruin everything." My blood turned to ice. Hearing him say their names confirming what I already feared. "I loved you," I whispered, my voice trembling. "No," he sneered, stepping closer. "You loved the version of me I let you see. And that's the beauty of it. You all do. Until the end." He lunged forward, and instinct took over. I swung the lamp with all my strength. It crashed against his shoulder, sending him stumbling back with a snarl. I bolted for the door. My feet pounded against the floor as I sprinted down the hall. Behind me, Adrian's voice rose, furious now. "Rachel, don't make this harder than it has to be." I grabbed my phone as I ran, clutching it tight, praying the call with Detective Mitchell was still connected. "Sarah?" I screamed into the receiver. "He's here. Adrian's here." But before I could reach the front door, a hand clamped around my arm and yanked me back. Adrian slammed me against the wall, his face inches from mine. His breath was hot, his grip bruising. "You ruined everything," he hissed. "I gave you the world, and now you're going to pay for it." Tears blurred my vision, but I forced myself to meet his eyes.
People know, Adrian.
They know about Emily, about Chloe,
About me.
For the first time, his confident smirk faltered. "You're lying." "Detective Mitchell knows," I spat. "She's watching you." His eyes darkened, rage boiling beneath the surface. "Then she'll go down with you." In that moment, I realized there was no pleading, no reasoning, no mask left to hide behind. Adrian was exactly what he'd always been. A predator. And I was prey. But not tonight. Summoning every ounce of strength, I drove my knee into his stomach. He gasped, loosening his grip just enough for me to shove him away and dash for the kitchen. I grabbed the first thing my hand touched, a knife. He staggered after me, fury twisting his features.
No charm. No softness.
Just pure, unmasked evil. "You think you can fight me?" he growled, advancing slowly. "Do you know how many women thought they could escape me? Do you know where they are now?" I tightened my grip on the knife, my hands slick with sweat. "Stay back," I warned, my voice shaking. He only laughed. "That's what Emily said." Suddenly, there was pounding at the door. "Rachel. Police. Open up." Adrian froze, his head snapping toward the sound. His eyes flicked back to me, wild with rage. "You called them," he snarled. I raised the knife higher.
No, Adrian.
"I survived you." He lunged just as the door burst open. Detective Mitchell and 2 officers stormed in. "Drop it, Adrian."
Now.
But Adrian didn't stop. He crashed into me, knocking the knife from my hands. We tumbled to the ground, his hands at my throat, squeezing, his face inches from mine. "You'll never leave me," he hissed. My vision blurred, spots dancing before my eyes. And then, a deafening crack. A gunshot. Adrian's body jerked, his grip loosening. He collapsed beside me, blood spreading across his shirt. I gasped for air, clutching my throat, coughing violently as Detective Mitchell pulled me into her arms. "It's over," she whispered firmly. "You're safe now, Rachel. You're safe." But as I stared at Adrian's lifeless body on my floor, his eyes still wide open in shock, I realized something chilling. The man I thought I loved never really existed.
He was just a mask.
And behind it was a monster. For weeks, the papers would write about him. The charming killer. The fiancé from hell. They'd list the victims, Emily, Chloe, and now me, the one who got away. But as I sat in the silence of my apartment that night, Detective Mitchell by my side, one thought wouldn't leave me. If I hadn't left that recording on my phone, if I hadn't pressed play that night, I would have been just another name on his list. The night Adrian died should have been the end. The end of the fear. The end of the lies. The end of the nightmare I never saw coming. But in many ways, it was only the beginning. Because when the monster is unmasked, you're left standing in the wreckage, trying to figure out how much of your life was real and how much was just part of his act. My parents came to the police station the next morning. I'll never forget the looks on their faces. My mom's hands shook as she pulled me into her arms, whispering over and over, "I'm so sorry, baby. I didn't believe you. I thought you were just nervous about marriage. I thought he was good." Her voice broke, tears soaking into my shoulder. And my dad, the man who had clapped Adrian on the back like a son, who had once told me I was lucky to have him, stood silent. His jaw was tight, his eyes red, his fists clenched at his sides. Finally, he said, voice rough with guilt, "I invited that man into our home. I welcomed him. And he could have taken you from us. I'll never forgive myself for not seeing it sooner." I wanted to tell them it wasn't their fault. That Adrian's mask had fooled everyone, not just me. But deep down, I understood their pain. Because I had believed the mask too. For weeks, my mind replayed every smile, every kiss, every promise Adrian ever made. "I can't wait for forever with you." I used to cling to those words as proof of his love. Now, they haunt me. Because forever, to him, meant something very different. He didn't want to build a life with me. He wanted to end mine. And the most chilling part? He might have succeeded if not for one tiny accident. A phone left recording on a coffee table. That slip of fate saved my life. Looking back, I see the red flags I ignored. The way he was too perfect. How he remembered every detail. How he carried himself with flawless confidence. How he never slipped up, not once. At the time, it felt romantic. Special. Like destiny. But people aren't perfect. And sometimes, perfection isn't love. It's control. If you're watching this right now, and something in your gut tells you something isn't right in your relationship, please listen to it. Don't silence that voice. Don't let charm or appearances convince you to doubt yourself. Because monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like the man your parents adore. The man you think you'll marry. The man who makes you laugh over wine and candles. Until the mask falls. I won't pretend it was easy after Adrian. There were nights I woke up gasping, convinced I heard his footsteps in my apartment. Days I couldn't trust anyone, not even myself. But therapy, family, and Detective Mitchell's unwavering support helped me find my footing again. Sarah reminded me, survival isn't weakness, Rachel. It's proof of your strength. And she was right. I survived. I wasn't just another name on his list. As for my parents, they've never let me out of their sight since. My mom calls me every night, just to hear my voice. My dad, who used to shake Adrian's hand, now double-checks the locks on my doors whenever he visits. Sometimes, I catch them looking at me with a mix of love and guilt, like they're silently apologizing all over again. But I don't blame them anymore. Adrian fooled everyone. And that's what makes this story so terrifying. Because if a man like Adrian could charm my parents, my coworkers, even strangers on the street, how many more Adrians are out there? How many people are smiling at their own perfect partner right now, never realizing the danger they're in? I don't tell you this story to scare you. I tell it because maybe, just maybe, it'll make someone out there pause. Ask questions. Trust their gut. Maybe it'll save someone else's life. As for me, I'm still healing. Some days I feel strong. Other days, I still look over my shoulder. But every day, I remind myself of one thing. I listened. I paid attention. And I survived. So if you've stayed with me through this story, thank you. And please, if you want more real-life stories that uncover the hidden truths behind closed doors, stories that could save someone you love, hit that subscribe button. Because monsters don't always live under the bed. Sometimes they sit across from you at dinner. And the only thing more dangerous than a monster is the mask they wear. Share your thoughts about my story in the comment section. Thank you for watching.